Hi guys, and welcome to my video. This is going to be concentrating on using the Tandy M100 in the modern day and attaching it to a standard computer. Now basically what happened was I bought two Tandy Model 100s because I had read about them, and the keyboards on them are amazing. They're mechanical keyboards and they're better than most keyboards are on any of the modern computers. They're fairly small and they do not attach to the internet easily, so I basically wanted them for writing tools. They run on 4 AA penlight batteries, which is really nice because there's a lot of AA's around. They do have issues with rechargeable batteries. Some of the newer high milliamp rechargeable batteries will work just fine, but it's kind of touch and go and you really have to try them out to see if they're going to work. So basically the big problem I ran into was I bought them a couple weeks ago, and I went to write on them and everything worked fine and I really did enjoy the program, but I ran into an issue and I tried to save the files off. The device by itself comes with a printer port and it has a built-in modem, but that's pretty much it for getting files off of it, and typing it and just printing it out to hard copy wasn't going to do me any good because I'd have to retype it again into a standard word processor before I could use it for any of my writing, and that was going to be a problem. So what I did was I started looking around on the internet. I thought, okay, there's got to be sites for these devices, and there are. There's the Club 100 site, which is still being maintained. Some of the links to some of the files are dead, and so I've been working on that, trying to copy off a bunch of the programs and a bunch of the documentation that's on there. The Internet Archive is really good. It has a ton of books on the Model 100, both with standard programs that you can write and with technical books as far as connections and things like that, which enables us to make our own cables if we need to. Some of these cables are really hard to find. Notably, the cable for the printer is increasingly difficult to find because it uses a specific edge connector that's very difficult to locate, and nobody apparently is making new cables. So everybody that's needing a cable, they're having to make their own. So anyway, let's get back to the subject here. I needed to get the files off of the Tandy M100 and onto my standard computer. So I looked around, I found a couple of programs. One is a program you can download from the Club 100 site, and what it does is you connect with a RS-232 cable onto the computer, and then you can run a DOS program and it will transfer files. So this is great, except for one minor problem. It does not run on a 64-bit computer. The program itself requires a 32-bit processor and a 32-bit operating system in order to actually get the files off of it and make it so it's installable. So that wasn't really an option, although I did have an old computer and I managed to hook it up to that, and it did work pretty good. So from there I moved on and I started looking around. I found a couple of emulators. One was VV, which is the virtual T emulator that does run, and it does work, and it runs on DOS, but it was primarily designed to showcase a bunch of programs that the individual that made it had. So it runs these programs, but it doesn't connect to devices. It does not have a way to transport it out. So what I did next was I looked around, and Ken from the Club 100 site wrote an emulator, and it's called Virtual T, and it is exactly Model 100, but it's simulated on the computer. and it's still a work in process. It's been a work in process for a number of years, although I did notice that it was updated earlier this month, which is kind of promising that people are still working on it. So there's several people working on it, but Ken was the primary person who did most of the work. So I put this virtual T, I downloaded it. You can get it from SourceForge. Version 1.7 is the new version. I actually had downloaded version 1.6, which was the version that was out at the time that I had it. You just unzip it, it's in a zip file, and you click on the program to access or to turn it on, enable it and stuff. So it runs just like any other program does. And once inside there, I actually got to looking around, and it does have settings for cassette output, which would have been, you know, fairly complicated to use, but you could have got it to work. However, it doesn't actually run at this time. It's saying that it's in process for further development. So I'm assuming at some point, if this project continues on and people continue to put time and effort into it, it will at some point connect to a cassette output, which would be really nice because it would provide a way for us to transfer files onto cassette. However, the Model 100 is notorious for not working with cassettes very well. In other words, you could save a program off of it and you can read it back on, but sometimes it scrambles the data. And I have done this. I have actually hooked it up to a cassette using the cable that came with the M100s, which is the same cable that the color computers use for cassette transfers. And I did run into this issue. I would save the program off. When we go to read it back on, it would take like 4 or 5 tries to read it. And some files it would read in perfectly, other files it would scramble the program. So it wasn't really going to be a viable way to do this. So I got to digging around in the menu of the virtual T, just playing around with it, and I thought to myself, because the M100s were designed to transfer files from 2 different M100s, in other words, if you've got 2 of them like I do, you can put a program on one or create a program on one, attach it with the Null connection cable, and transfer the data over. So I thought, well, maybe the emulator will work the same. So I looked in the settings, and sure enough, there's a COM port setting. Now, if you do not have a Null modem connected to your modern PC, it's not going to show anything. You're going to click on the host connection button, and it's going to be blank. So basically, it's not going to show any options. So at first, when I did it, I assumed, well, maybe it doesn't work. But I already had the Null connection cable with the USB adapter. I plugged the USB adapter into it, and lo and behold, it found it, attached it to COM port 3. I went into the virtual T interface and was able to set that at COM port 3. So that worked really, really well. Then I connected the virtual T program to the actual Model 100 using the Null modem cable, and sure enough, it was able to talk back and forth like 10, everybody's favorite program that they like to use. This is the program or the computer I wanted to transfer my files onto. So what I did was I connected the Null modem cable that I bought and to a USB Null modem adapter, and then I went into here, and if you just start typing device, I don't know if you can spell it right, there, device, and it'll pull up device manager. You can go into the Windows device manager, and we're going to look right here under ports, and you will see that the prolific USB to serial COM port is connected to COM port 3. So that's what we want to remember that. Then you've got the virtual T Windows 32 version that I downloaded off of SourceForge. You go down to virtualt.exe, you operate it, and it comes up as a Model 100 emulator here. if we go under emulation and go to peripherals, you can see you can choose this. Now standard, it's going to be under no emulation. This is going to be blank down here. So we want to just tell it to use the host COM port, which is the only one that will show up. You'll see that a lot of these other things are not supported as of yet, but we can use the COM port. So we'll click OK, and that will connect it to the COM port. Now through the cable, we're going to actually get the ability to connect to a regular Model 100, and that's going to be how we're going to do this. So basically we go ahead and we'll assume that our program we want to use is on here, that we're going to transfer. Perhaps I'll transfer the DigiClock or the Temps program over. These are just some programs that I got on the site, and you can make your own too. The other nice thing about this is you can actually click with the mouse itself to select the different features of this. Now you can connect it with the telecom function, but you really don't need to. So what we're going to do is we're going to load a program. We'll say load city. I'm going to press Control C to break into it. We'll list it. Show it says it's on here. It's got all the original header information. Sometimes it's tempting if you type these things in manually not to put the header information, but I figure the people that created it, you know, they deserve some credit, so go ahead and do that. You can see on here that it does run slower than it does on an actual Model 100, and even though it runs slower, it still works. So for what we're doing, transferring of files and or writing files, it's really good, and it does have a additional file viewer that's really nice as well. So what we're going to do is we've loaded the program into BASIC here, and we are going to tell it to save, and we put in that, and then we are saving it to the COM port. So we put COM port down. Now you have to type in the modem settings. Normally when I do a regular DO file, I will set the settings at 9.8 N1E, and that is the connection speed I want to use. But we need a slower connection because we're sending the .BA program over, and it will scramble some of the stuff if the connection's too fast. And I think this is the problem that it has with the cassette recording unit. I'm not really sure. So we're going to select 5. That's going to slow it down from 19,000 to about 1,200 for a baud rate. And then we're going to select 8 because we want an 8-bit. We do want non-parity. And then we're going to select 1 and E because we do want error correction. Okay, so we've got save 5.8 and 1E. And this is where we're going to pause and switch to a different camera view. So 1 second. Alright, so now we're looking at the actual Tandy TRS-80 Model 100. We'll go ahead and turn it on. It's just a switch on the side here. As you can see, the screen is exactly like the emulator. It may not be readable that much, but you can take my word on it. If we go into BASIC, because we're on the second unit here, we are going to again type, but we're going to do something different. We're going to type new to make sure there is no program currently in there. That's going to say OK. And then because we are loading this onto this machine, we're going to type load, and then we do our deal again, then this, and this is the important part. We have to make sure, oh actually I'm sorry, it's load, then the bracket, then COM, oops. Okay, now we make sure our setting is the same. So we're going to do 5 TRS-80 N1E, which we talked about earlier. And because we're loading to this computer, we have to start this one first. If we send before we load, it's not going to get the header of the file, and it's just going to sit there and look at you. So anyway, this is how we do it. We type load, we hit enter on this one, and I'm not sure if you can see that, but it just kind of pauses. Alright, then 1 second here. Now we go back to our emulator. There we go. And you can see we're still at save.com. So this is going to transmit this. And so we will press enter. Okay. Then you wait because it's transferring at 1200 baud. So it's a little slow. It's not bad. It does take a couple of seconds to go, maybe 30-40 seconds. And you just want to wait, because when I first did this I wasn't patient enough. So now we see where it says OK at the bottom of this. If we come over to the Model 100, I don't know how well you can read that, but we can see on this one that it also says OK. So now if we type list, we will see that the CD program that we had on the computer is on the Tandy Model 100. So it's fairly easy to do. It's not a very long process, it's really quick. This was the first time that I actually transferred a program on this particular laptop. I've used my desktop at work a couple of times. I've used the desktop here at home. I just wanted to use a laptop because it was more convenient, and just to prove that, you know, even on a computer where it's never been hooked up before, it works. There's no issues with this at all. It works really well. So then from there, you can just type save and put in your mark there, and then give it a name. I may already have this on here, so we'll put that as City 2, BA, and click there. And now if we go back with F8 to our menu, we can see where City 2 is saved on there. And to run it, again, you just press your space bar like normal, and bam, it goes. So that's how you do it. To send the files from the Model 100 to the PC, you simply do the opposite. You connect it up the same way you got it now. You start both the emulator and the actual Model 100. Works really well. And yeah, you can hear it chirping away there. This is a pretty cool program. But you take and you just do the opposite. You type save on the Model 100, you type load on the actual computer, and it works. So again, to get out of this, just Control C, and you can break it. And then I always type a CLS, clear the screen off. And that's how I'm doing the transfers. Okay, so here's the cables we're using. As you can see, just gonna go ahead and take that off, and always turn it off before you start hooking and unhooking cables. But you can see it connects onto the back. It is a large R232C type connector, so it's got the large plug on this side. I got a small serial port connector on this side. This is how it came from the company I ordered it from on Amazon. Unlike the traditional ones, it does not say Null connector on it, it's just generic. But what I did was I got this device here, which is a Trendnet TU-68, and it has the serial connector on this side. It has a standard USB connector on that side, and if you connect the two together, that. You can now plug from the Model 100 large connector to the standard USB serial device, and it automatically recognizes it. On two computers I've hooked it up to, it's recognized it as COM port 3 on both of them, so I don't know if that's just standard or because I don't have anything on COM port 3 on either one of my machines. So anyway, that will set you back $10 to $15. It's not a big deal. It's real easy to connect. It does come with a driver disk. I did not need that on Windows 10 at all. It just loads the minute you plug it in. It recognizes it. And just make sure you're setting your COM port on virtual T after you start it up, and before you connect the cable to the actual Model 100. What I do is I plug it in to the USB port, because it has to be plugged in for it to recognize the COM port. Open virtual T, set the COM port to COM port 3 in this case, or whatever your COM port is. Again, you just look on Device Manager to see that. Then connect it to the back of the Model T and proceed from there. Works pretty good. So that's all I got for today. I hope you found this instructional tape to be helpful. If not, let me know. I can answer what questions I can. And that's pretty much it. If you like this video and want to see more like it, go ahead and hit the subscribe button.